Hi everybody, and welcome to my second video of 3 on the Canon AE-1 program. This is the AE-1 program. The first video went through what are all these crazy buttons. This video is going to talk about what they are and how to use them. It's much more in depth. It's much more detailed. If you have a specific thing you're looking for, check the index below, and you can skip to that part of the video and avoid all the parts of this camera that you already know how to use. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the lenses. This is an interchangeable lens camera, and so you can take the lenses on and off. It accepts new and old FD lenses. So the lens that's on here is a new FD lens. This is an old FD lens, and the main difference is in terms of appearance, so that you can tell them apart. The new FD lens has this black ring at the bottom. The old FD lens has the silver ring. On the old FD lens, the silver ring turns. On the new FD lens, to mount it, you have to turn the whole lens. So, new FD lens, red dot to red dot, push it on. Oh, of course, making sure that there is no visible red dot inside the camera body. If you can see a red dot inside the camera body, then you need to, let's get a better view of that. So you can see the red dot there. If you can see that red dot, you need to press this silver button so that this lever comes back into place over here. And to mount this lens, red dot to red dot, turn the whole lens just shy of 90 degrees. To unmount a new FD lens, there's a little silver button on the bottom. You push it and rotate counterclockwise. Clockwise to mount, counter or anti-clockwise to unmount. With an old FD lens, you want to make sure that the red dot on top of the silver ring there is aligned with the central focusing line right there. You put the lens on, and then you rotate just the silver ring that same distance, and now that's ready to go. To unmount an old lens, no button to push, you just rotate it anti-clockwise. Again, rotating clockwise to mount and counter or anti-clockwise to unmount. So I'm going to grab my demonstrator film right there. And this is a roll of 35mm film. I spooled it myself, so that's why it doesn't have any markings on it. So to load it, you just open up the back of the camera this way. And with the back of the camera opened, make sure that this knob is up here so that this cassette can fit into the cassette into the cassette area. Then you push the knob down. You might have to rotate it to seat it into the cassette. There's forks on the lever here, on the knob base that connect to the cassette. Pull out some film. Make sure that your shutter is set to a reasonable speed. 250 is fine. You want to make sure that the lever here is set to A, and then you just feed the notch into the take-up spool and push the shutter once. Remember not to touch the shutter. Make sure your finger's not in here or none of the film is. And then you advance one frame. There you go, and you can see that that's already starting to lay fairly flat. You can advance another frame. At this point now, you shut the back of the camera completely so that it clicks. I'm actually not going to do that because I want to show you how this is going to work. Once the camera back is shut, then you tighten up the spool with the take-up lever. Now when you take a picture, you've composed it, you're very happy with the image, shutter speed looks good, you take the picture. When you hear that clicking noise, that's the sound of the shutter opening and allowing light to hit the film. Then afterwards you advance the film. And you can see what's happening here. Now with the film back closed, this film would be kept flat on plane like this. And you can see where the top two, or the outside two film alignment rails keep this film from sliding up and down. And you can see underneath the sprocket holes here these silver rails, and what they do is they help keep the film flat on plane. So there we go. You can see how that works, like right now. And the film pressure plate in the back keeps everything sandwiched together so that your film is flat when the light hits it. Because if your film were bowed up like it is right now, then the light would hit it at different focus points. And even a small fraction of a millimeter can change the focus of your lens and your image. So if the camera were closed and the film was bowed like it is right now, the image would be at a different focus on the left than it is on the right, and the right would be much, much softer than the left there, and it would not look good. I've had cameras do that, cheaper old Bakelite cameras, and it's not a good look. No one's getting in line to have their picture taken with it. So you take pictures, you're going out all day, you're having fun, taking photos with your friends and everything. And so I'm not going to go through the whole roll of film, but let's say now you've gone through the entire roll of film. Okay, so again, make sure anytime you have your film in the camera, the back is closed. That's very important because the film works because it's never been exposed to light. And what happens is when light hits it, then it records whatever light is hitting it. If you open up the camera, it's going to record all the light hitting it from everywhere, and it's going to erase any image on your film. The way it works in the camera is that the lens focuses light, a light field. Everything you see is a light field, and the camera focuses that onto the film, so that instead of having a light field, you have light points coming in. A little bit beyond the scope of this video. I'll explain it in greater depth when I do a video explaining how lenses and film and light work. It's in the works. I'm working on that one. Very complex video. And at any rate, so that'll explain that. But point of it is, you've gone out, you've had fun, you've taken your entire roll of film. So to rewind it, you push this button right here on the bottom, you push it in, and now you're free to rewind it. The film back would do what my finger's doing. So I'm going to hold it in place, and now you rewind the film. Come on. This camera's so dirty that nothing in it really wants to work the way that it should. So you can hear as it's rewinding that there's that sprockety sound. And now here's what it sounds like when the film comes off the take-up spool. Okay, and now the tension also changes. Suddenly there's a much less tension, and I'm not going to roll it in the entire way, but you would want to, when you're finished with the film, roll it in the entire way as a reminder that the film's been taken. And when the film's rolled in the entire way, there's no leader on it. You can't accidentally use it again and get double exposures for your whole film. Remember, it's film technology, if you've never used a film camera before, is meaningfully different than digital, where film can only be used for one set of images one time, as opposed to a digital memory card, which can be used over and over and over again, just erasing the film each time, or the photos each time. Film is one time, and you're done. One and done. Next thing we're going to do is change the battery. The Canon AE-1 program, like the AE-1 and many other great cameras, uses a PX28 battery. So you check the battery. So first off, we're going to change it to A. We're going to check the battery. So that beeping lets us know that the battery is good. So if there are no beeps, then the battery is dead. And what you do is you pop open this little door right here, and you can use your finger just to pop it open. If you're lucky enough to have the black plastic piece that fits on here, that has a dual purpose. You can use it to slide in here to unlock this easily. You can also slide it over in the accessory groups to cover the back. Viewfinder if you're doing things like astrophotography. And then all you have to do is take the camera out. Now you can see inside of there's a little guide, negative blue plus red, positive red. Red's on the top, blue is on the bottom. So most batteries, this is actually the only PX I've ever seen, the PX28, that is not red on the top and blue on the bottom. But at any rate, you just want to make sure you have it plussed up, minus down. So a few things, one thing specifically, and this a few people have asked me periodically about why it is they put the battery in and things aren't working. They just bought the battery brand new, it's fresh. There's a little metal piece on the bottom here. See that little silver dot? That's spring loaded, and it's spring loaded so you can take the battery in and out, and it keeps tension on the battery. After time, sometimes if the spring rusts or fails for some other reason, the that thing will just sink into the camera's body and it won't keep contact between the battery and the camera. You can either fix that, it's very expensive and those springs aren't very common, or if you can take it apart and replace it with a spring, great. The easier way to do that is with a little aluminum shim. Just take some aluminum foil, fold it up until it's about 1 to 2 millimeters thick, in that range. Slide it in, pop in the battery, and that'll restore contact. If you really want to go crazy, you can take some 16, maybe 18 gauge, I'm not exactly sure, perfect size copper wire, strip it of the solid core copper wire, strip the insulator around it, wrap it into a coil with some pliers, press it flat in a vise or something, and put it in there. Just make it so it's the size of the battery bottom, and that'll work. Now, anytime you're not going to use your camera for an extended period of time, you should take the battery out. That'll help make sure that it doesn't leak or explode. Photo batteries made of silver oxide don't tend to leak. I've seen a handful that have. Alkaline batteries will leak like crazy if you leave them in your camera after a few months or a couple of years, depending on the storage conditions. So it's a good idea, if you're not going to use your camera for more than a month, to yank the battery out so that you don't have to pay for a repair or ruin your camera by having a battery explode in it. And I've bought some cameras off eBay that have had batteries explode in it, and I've had a couple of them repaired, and I assure you it's not a cheap repair. So here we have the flash hot shoe on top. It syncs at 1/60th of a second. Right here, 1/60th. What that means is that at any speed from 1/60th and slower, you can use the flash and get a good image. If you go 1/25th, 2/50th, 500th, or 1,000th, the flash will only illuminate part of the image. Now here's how that works. Let's say that what you are looking at right now represents the image you're going to take with a flash. So here's a shutter curtain. Okay, we saw the black shutter curtains before, and they block the light from getting into the camera. What they do is they travel sideways. So at 1/60th of a second, the shutter curtain opens, and it's all the way open, flash, and then the other shutter curtain comes in and closes. And again, at 1/30th of a second, flash or no flash. It's open for slightly longer, and then the second curtain comes in. Same thing for a second or 2 seconds, bulb mode. It's the same process. This opens. Now, let's say that you're going to take a picture at 1/500th of a second, or 1/125th, or whatever the shutter speed is. This opens, and then you get a faster shutter speed, not by this physically moving faster, but by the gap between the curtains getting smaller. So, for instance, when the curtain opens here at 1/125th, the gap might be about like that. Because what happens is that the film is exposed to light for 1/125th of a second. At 1/1000th, the gap might be like that. So if you were to use the flash at 1/125th, boom, there you go. That's what's going to be illuminated in your flash image. At 1/1000th, there you go. Just that little tiny bit's going to be illuminated. So anything faster than 1/60th of a second, and you won't obtain a fully illuminated image. You'll have part of the image will be dark black, where the shutter was blocking the light from coming into the film. So 1/60th is the fastest shutter speed at which the entire film curtain is open, and all of the film is at one point exposed to light at the same exact moment. So it takes X flashes, xenon, electronic flashes. And it does not take old bulb flashes, but that's okay. It should take any kind of modern flash, from a $9.99 bought it at Kmart flash to a $300 to $500 Canon brand, ordered it online at a specialty store flash. So there are a few special features we're going to talk about with this camera. It's a 3-mode camera with program, manual, and shutter priority. Okay, so in program mode, you need to have this in A on your aperture ring and program on the shutter ring. And when you're in program mode, the camera's going to determine how to take the picture. It will determine the shutter speed as well as the aperture setting. And that's done because there's a computer microprocessor in here, by our standards, primitive, by the early 80s standards, super cutting edge and amazing. There's a microprocessor in here, and what it'll do is it'll take a preset range of data, and based on a 50 millimeter lens, and then 50 or 55, I forget which, and then taking the light reading that comes in from the lens, calculate what the proper exposure should be. So let's say that what you're seeing here represents what you want to take a picture of with your AE-1 program. It has a center weighted meter, which means that the area approximately inside my finger ring here represents either 60 or 75% of the metering data. I couldn't actually find that. It wasn't that I found in the manual or anywhere online. I actually spent an hour and a half looking for that. So if somebody knows where that is, I would be really interested in knowing if this is a 60-40 or a 70-25. But that center area will provide the majority of the metering data, and everything outside of it will represent the balance of the metering data. So the camera will read that as though what it's seeing is a flat gray scene, either 18% or 12%. Different manufacturers, cameras, repair people, set their meters up differently. They're calibrated differently. Some are calibrated to an 18%, some are calibrated to 12%. Honestly, it's not a huge difference. And it's a much bigger debate than we have time to get into in any video ever. We're not going to go down that road. So at any rate, so the camera will see this, basing most of the metering data on the center, and then it'll automatically determine when it's in program mode the proper shutter and aperture. So let's say, for instance, that you were taking a picture of a person and their face was in the middle of the image, then most of the metering data would come from the light being reflected by their face, and that's perfect for a portrait if you want to line the person up in the middle. If you want to take a picture where you have the person over here to the side because you want to compose it a little bit differently, so show the Seine River or something off in the background, some great scenic thing that you guys have seen and done, then what you would have to do is recompose for a minute, meter off of their face, hold down the AE lock button, which is the top of these two buttons, the little black button, hold it down, recompose your image so that your girlfriend or boyfriend is over here to the side, and take the picture, and then release the AE lock button. And that will allow you to do compensation. So you can meter off what you want to have properly exposed, compose a slightly different exposure, a slightly different frame, and keep the same exposure settings. Because if you have a bright background and the person up here that you want to get in the pictures in shade, then this will be properly exposed, and this over here, the person in the shade, will be very, very dark. Whereas if you meter off of them by focusing the camera on the person, hold down the AE lock button and recompose, the camera will remember the meter settings that you took when you had the camera pointed at the person, and so they will be properly exposed. And this will just be somewhat brighter in the back, but you should still be able to see what it is. So that's how the program mode and the AE lock work. I hit two with one stone. I'm even impressed by that. So the other modes are shutter priority. Oh, so program mode also, if you just want to have someone take a picture of you and your girlfriend or boyfriend, what you do is you ask them to stand back, you focus on them, set it to program mode, make sure this is an A, just tell them, take our picture, hand the camera to them. As long as they stay in the same place, you'll be in focus. And program will do all the thinking for them. Trust me, I've had people try to take my picture with a manual focus camera before. The results are always awful and hilarious, unless you go about pre-focusing it for them. So anyway, when you take it out of program mode and you have it set on any shutter speed, the camera automatically becomes a shutter priority camera, meaning that whatever you set the shutter speed at, the camera will automatically determine the aperture based on the amount of light coming in through the lens to the light meter. So let's say you're at your kid's track meet and you want to get a bunch of shots of them running, and Okay, so for this lap, you're going to get a bunch of shots of them, and they're going to be frozen, right? So I'm going to set it at 1,000th of a second, and you're going to focus in on them as they come around. You're going to take a few pictures as they do, and the camera will automatically determine what the best aperture is for 1/1000th of a second. Okay, great. Second lap is coming around, and you want to get them so there's a little bit of blur in their legs, so they look like they're actually running really, really fast, so fast the camera can't focus on them. Oh, it's going to be a great shot. So what you do is you set it down to 1/60th of a second, get them in focus, and then when they come running around, you take a few shots, and the camera's again going to determine the best aperture for 1/60th of a second, and as long as it's in focus, you'll get the shot that you want. So that's what shutter priority means. You set the shutter speed, the camera sets the aperture, and it's a pretty good way, especially to get action shots. It's also a good way to make sure that you don't accidentally take a shot at 1/4 of a second. I personally prefer to shoot in aperture priority mode, where I select the aperture and the camera selects the shutter. And there have been a lot of times where I've accidentally taken half-second images without meaning to, and that ruins a frame. But it's life, it's part of the fun. So the third mode is full manual. To get to full manual mode, you make sure that it's not in program, so you have a shutter speed selected, and then simply take your lens aperture ring off of A. And now you're going to set the aperture as well as the shutter speed. And you're going to do it based off of metering data inside of the camera. And we're going to take a look at that in just a minute. And I'll show you how the meter reacts in each of the 3 different modes when we look through the camera's viewfinder. Okay, so we're going to look through the camera's viewfinder now. I'm going to set this to A so we can see how all of the modes operate. Okay, so you can see the split ring in the center. And what that's going to do is help you focus. So you can see right now in the middle of the image how the black lens cap appears to be jutting out on the right side of the bottom of the split ring and not on the top. If I bring that into focus, you can see how the edges of it come together. You can't quite get it in focus with this lens, but you can see how that's helping you to focus. You also have some prisms around the ring, around the split, that will help you get finer focus, and then an open matte field in the middle that will help you with composition. Over here on the right side, there we go. Okay, so that's over on the right side of the viewfinder, and you can see that little 4. What that's telling you is what your aperture is. It's in program mode right now, so it's telling you what the aperture is going to be. It does not tell you what the shutter speed is going to be. Okay, you can see as I change the light level coming in by moving my hand in front of and away from the lens, how that is changing. So now I'm going to go into shutter priority mode. Okay, so at 1/15th of a second, it's f11. Now I'm going to keep it at 1/15th, but I'm going to move my hand in front of it. You can see as the light level changes, the shutter speed won't change, but the aperture will change. And it tells you that the aperture is changing. Now up at the top, I can't quite seem to focus on it. It will tell you if it's in program with a green P, or manual mode with a red A, or shutter priority mode with no indication other than your aperture. So some other features in here, we've gone over program mode and some of the other things. I'm going to go through some of the other features here really quickly, like self-timer. This is a 10-second self-timer. So what you do is you get your settings set how you want them, and you get your camera on a tripod or a bench or other sturdy support, and then you push the shutter button. Well, what's going to happen is that it's going to count down with beeping, fast beeping, and then it will take the picture, and then you can rush back and advance it and go take another one. Okay, so let's say that you want to get a picture of yourself and you want to be in front of the camera either with a group of friends or just hanging out remembering that you were at this awesome beach or whatever. So you want to use a self-timer, so you switch the camera into S mode, Now, what that does is that's going to count down from 10 seconds. There's a couple things to bear in mind here. The most important is that here's the sound of it. Well, not the most important, but important is here's the sound. It's going to beep a lot. So if you're trying to get a picture of you sneaking up on a bear, that's a bad idea because it's going to scare the bear and you're going to get eaten. So after you take the picture, after it takes the picture, then you advance. Here's a key thing to remember. It's going to take the meter reading when you push the button. So if you push the button, it's going to take the meter reading right then. It knows it's at 1/125th, it's got to be at f11. Okay, great. You run over and in the next 10 seconds, all of a sudden the light bulb is burnt out and it's dark, or cloud comes in or whatever, it changes the lighting. It's still going to shoot at 1/125th f11 because it took the meter reading when you pushed the button. Likewise, if you run over to get in front of the camera and all of a sudden the clouds part and there's this beam of sun on you, it's still going to take the picture at the same reading. So changing light conditions can affect that. There's nothing you can do to prevent that. It's just important to know that the meter reading for the exposure on the self timer is taken when you push the button, not when it takes the image. And that's an advancement which didn't really come along until later in cameras. Then down here we have the depth of field preview button. I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to set the aperture manually to f2.8. So this is a stop from wide open, and you can see here that you can see the back of the camera, or the light coming through the viewfinder. So if we push that open, you can see that the aperture stops down just a little bit. Okay. Now if we set this to f22, or in this case f16 because I'm not man enough to stop it all the way down, you can see how much smaller that opening gets. So what's happening when you use the depth of field preview is that the camera is going to stop down to the aperture that the image will be taken at, and you can see approximately what the depth of field is going to look like. Your viewfinder will get significantly darker, but you can get an idea of what will and will not be in focus. And that can periodically be a useful tool. I learned using a K1000, which doesn't have that, a Pentax K1000, so it's not a mandatory tool, but if you have it, it can definitely be a nice thing to have. And that does it for this video. So the third video is going to look at how to use the power winder on this camera. We're going to look at a power winder A, and then talk about the differences between the A, the A2, and the MA. So if this video was helpful, and if you learned a little bit about your camera and how to use it and some things like that, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments section below. I'm pretty good about getting back to you pretty quickly. If you have suggestions for other videos or ideas, please let me know. I'm more than happy to film them for you if I have the equipment and technical know-how. And one last thing, thank you guys for watching.